What happened?
I swear I don't know. 1 minute the glass was there and then it was gone. It was like magic.
There's no such thing as magic.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to podcast 9 3/4, a Potter podcast. I'm your host, the Half-Blood Princess. So today we have chapter 2 of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the Vanishing Glass. So these first few chapters, they start off pretty dense. They really have a lot of information just to make sure that the scene is set. They have a certain suspense to them that keeps us guessing, like, what's really going on here? What are these books going to be about? Though I'm sure a lot of you already know that. If any of you are reading this for the first time, just want to say that you're super lucky, but I feel like you probably have some sort of idea of what is going to happen. All right, so this chapter takes place 10 years after the first chapter, after Harry is dropped off at number 4 Privet Drive. So the scene starts off setting the what it looks like inside of number 4 Privet Drive. It describes how there's pictures of Dudley all throughout the house and how he seems like he's such a happy boy, but there's no sign that another boy lives there, yet though we know Harry does live there. So it starts off with Harry waking up from a dream that he kind of remembers, and it includes a flying motorbike, which is pretty funny because we know that that's actually true. That's how Hagrid dropped him off at number 4 Privet Drive, so that's funny. We find out that it is Dudley's birthday. We find out that Harry lives in the cupboard under the stairs. We find out like there's spiders under the stairs, and the way that these spiders are described is they're pretty big. We find out that Harry's life just isn't that great. It's pretty miserable. It really is. I never really knew what a cupboard under the stairs was until I read this. My mom had to explain it to me, kind of like a closet under the stairs. I always thought of a cupboard like in the kitchen, so. All right, so it starts off with him. He had just woke up from his dream in the cupboard under the stairs. He goes into the kitchen. He sees all the presents that Dudley has got. He sees he got a computer that he asked for, a second television, a racing bike. Harry thinks that it's funny because why would Dudley want a racing bike? He's very fat and he doesn't like to exercise. It talks about how Dudley kind of beats up Harry a lot. Like he punches him all the time. And then it mentions how Harry's super fast, which makes it kind of difficult for Dudley to catch him sometimes. So Harry is described as super small and skinny, and it talks about how he has to wear Dudley's old clothes, and Dudley is like 4 times the size of Harry, so you can just imagine what those clothes looked like on him. This is really the first time that they describe Harry as an adult. They say that he has a thin face, knobbly knees, black hair, bright green eyes, and round glasses held together with a bunch of Scotch tape. And they have to be held together because of how many times Dudley has punched him and broke his glasses. The only thing that Harry really likes about his appearance is the thin scar that he has on his forehead shaped like a lightning bolt. Which is funny because we all know that that's more than just a scar. So this is where we find out that Harry has always been told that his parents died in a car crash, which we know is definitely not the case. Like, at this point, I'm feeling so sorry for Harry because we know he lives in a cupboard under the stairs. He's treated poorly by the Dursleys, has to wear hand-me-down clothes, and now we find out that they've been lying to him about his parents. And Harry doesn't know any better. He's only 10 years old at this point. The Dursleys always made it clear that Harry isn't to ask questions. It's just a way of life. Harry made breakfast that morning. And then Dudley comes down the stairs, and they describe him basically as a small Vernon. Harry jokes that Dudley looks like a pig in a wig. So I thought that part was funny. This is the part where Dudley counts his birthday presents. He sees that there's only 37 presents this year, and last year he had 38 presents. So he's starting to have a little tantrum. So they say that they'll take him out and buy him 2 more presents later when they go out. Dudley's cool with that. But this just goes to show how spoiled and how extra he is. And it shows that Harry's treated like crap and Dudley gets the world. So this just kind of shows a little bit of a background to Harry Potter's upbringing. Okay, at this point, this is when the Dursleys get a phone call, and we find out that Mrs. Figg has broke her leg and she's not going to be able to watch Harry today. Every year on Dudley's birthday, Mrs. Figg watches Harry while Dudley goes out and does something fun and cool for his birthday. This is cool because we all know that Mrs. Figg is a more important character later on in the series than right now when they just happen to mention her briefly in the 2nd chapter of the 1st book. He thinks about how being watched by Mrs. Figg is so terrible and how he hates it there. So Harry's secretly happy that this is happening. Vernon mentions calling Marge to watch him, and Petunia states that she wouldn't do it because she hates the boy, which we all know is true from the 3rd book when we meet Marge. This is definitely true. She absolutely does hate him. So they think about it for a few, and then they decide that they'll take them along, or they'll take Harry along with them, because they would never think of leaving Harry home alone. They would come back to a house that was blown up or something. So they mentioned Dudley fake crying about this, how he doesn't want Harry to come and he's pretending to cry. And that's when Dudley's friend Pierce arrives, and he just automatically stops crying, just completely at once. Dudley's friend Pierce is described as a scrawny boy with a face that looks like a rat. He's usually the one that holds people's arms behind their back when Dudley hits them. So he's Dudley's right-hand man. So Pierce is going to go to the zoo with the Dursleys and Harry. Before they leave, Vernon pulls Harry to the side and gives him a warning, letting him know that there will be no funny business, or else he'd be in the cupboard from now until Christmas, which is an awfully long time considering Dudley's birthday is June 23rd. I don't think that the actual date is mentioned in the book, but it is something that J.K. Rowling has confirmed afterward. So they talk about how no one ever believes Harry because strange things often happen around Harry. And then they give a couple different examples of strange things that have happened. Like, one time Petunia went to cut Harry's hair and she cut it so short it was almost bald. Harry was scared that night that he was going to be made fun of at school the next day because he was already made fun of for his baggy clothes and things like that. The next morning when he woke up, his hair was just as long as it was before Petunia had cut it off. They mentioned how he was put in the cupboard for a week about this, even though he swore and tried to explain that he didn't do anything. Another time, Petunia tried putting this really ugly sweater on him, and the harder she tried putting it on him, like the smaller it became, to the point where it was like tiny, like a doll-sized sweater. Petunia decided it must have shrank in the wash, so he didn't get in trouble for that one. But he did get in terrible trouble the time that he was found on top of the school kitchen on the roof. Dudley's gang was chasing him, and he was surprised to be where he was, sitting there on the chimney. He doesn't know how he ended up there. He just tried to jump behind something, and bam, he was on the roof. So he got in a lot of trouble for that one. Well, Vernon and Petunia, they're so concerned about Harry coming, but they let him come anyways. Harry's happy that he's going. He doesn't care that Dudley and his friend are there. On the way there, Harry mentions about his dream and the flying motorbike, and Vernon obviously gets set off by this and starts yelling, "There's no such thing." Harry says he knows it was just a dream. The story mentions that that's what sets the Dursleys off, is anything that acts a way that it shouldn't. No matter a dream or cartoon. So the zoo, when they get there, it was pretty crowded and it was super sunny. At the entrance, the Dursleys buy Dudley and Pierce a large chocolate ice cream. The worker lady asks Harry what he wants before they could actually walk away. So the Dursleys go ahead and buy him like a cheap lemon popsicle, like the cheapest thing on there. But Harry doesn't mind. He is so happy about this because he doesn't normally get anything at all. It's pretty crazy, but Harry's feeling like he has had the best morning he's had in a long time. He kind of walks a distance away from them so they might forget that he's there and he can enjoy himself. Harry knew that this was too good to last. So they go into the reptile house after lunch. Lizards, snakes, they're all slithering behind the glass. This is the part we all know very well. So Harry's looking at this snake, feeling sorry for him because all these people keep tapping on the glass and stuff. And Harry kind of feels like he understands what the snake is going through. So the snake looks at Harry in the eyes and winks at him. Harry winks back. The snake gives Harry a look that he gets this treatment all the time. Harry's having a conversation with the snake. So we know that the boa constrictor was born in captivity, so he's used to all these people staring in on him. This is when Pierce realizes that Harry is talking to the snake and yells at everyone to look. Hey, look, Harry's talking to the snake. Dudley pushes Harry out of the way and Harry falls hard on the floor. What happened next came so fast. 1 second, Pierce and Dudley were leaning up against the glass. The next second, the glass had vanished and the snake was slithering out of the tank right past Harry. And Harry swears that the snake says, "Thanks, amigo." So the glass doesn't reappear like it does in the movie and Dudley isn't trapped inside the tank. I think they do that to make it like a more dramatic effect, but that does not happen in the books. So on the way back to the car, Harry thinks about how the only thing the snake did was slither past Dudley and Pierce's feet, but both Pierce and Dudley are saying how they were almost squeezed to death and how they had this traumatic experience. Pierce says Harry was talking to the snake, but Vernon does not address this comment until Pierce is gone. He's so mad he can barely breathe. All he can manage to say is, "Go, cupboard, stay, no meals." So he doesn't say there's no such thing as magic or anything like that, like he says in the movie, like I put at the beginning of this. So this is where they mention how Harry's laying in his bed wishing that he had a watch so he could know if the Dursleys were asleep so he could sneak out and get food. This is so sad because he's only 10 years old. He's a 10-year-old boy at this point. I never thought of it growing up about how, abused and neglected that Harry was. I feel so sorry for him. I don't think that this is something that would be allowed these days. So Harry is really just laying there reminiscing on his last 10 years that he's had with the Dursleys. He's laying there thinking about his past. He tries to remember the car crash that he was supposedly in with his parents. And sometimes when he thinks hard enough, he can remember this strange, blinding green light, which we all know is the color of the light that emits from your wand when the killing curse is used, but he doesn't know that, and he remembers this burning pain in his forehead. He assumes that this all was the crash. They talk about when Harry was younger, he always dreamed of some relative coming and rescuing him, but we know that doesn't happen before this. Harry always thought that it was strange growing up because sometimes strangers in the street would seem to know him. Strange strangers too. They would have on weird clothes. One time someone even bowed to him in the street. They talk about how he's had his hand shaken in the streets and things like that, but Harry wouldn't be able to see them again because as soon after they would just disappear or vanish. Speaking of disappearing and vanishing, this is about the third time in the book they've talked about apparating. I know the first time was when Dumbledore apparated onto Privet Drive 10 years ago. And then when Harry supposedly was running away from Dudley and his gang, and he tried to jump behind something and ended up on the roof. And now they're talking about, random people shaking his hand and then vanishing right after. So what I'm assuming is that these people are apparating, or that's what's happening. Harry accidentally did that at a young age. But they also talked about how no one liked Harry at school and his baggy old clothes, and how no one would disagree with Dudley and his gang. So Harry just had a really rough time growing up. This is where the chapter really ends, just giving us an insight to Harry's younger years before he gets that letter in the mail. It really just talks about that and sets the scene. So like I said, these first few chapters are pretty dense, getting us ready for our Hogwarts experience. But it's so worth it. All right, so like I said, that concludes the chapter. Pretty excited to read the next chapter. I will talk to you guys again next week. In the meantime, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at A Potter Podcast. All righty. Okay, love you. Bye.